Hello, I'm Ian Badco and I recently retired from Sumo Digital. I want to get into some indie games of my own now, and I also want to do some stuff with my other passion, which is poetry. And I also want to do some stuff in the overlap between the two, and that's what this is. For a long time, I've had the idea that Poetry 1.0 was people standing in front of you reciting their poems, and Poetry 2.0 was poems written on a page that you read. And pretty much all the forms of presenting poetry we've got these days are a variation on one or the other of these. Like if you read a poem on a web page, that's a variation of Poetry 2.0. And if you watch a video of someone reading a poem on a web page, that's a variation of Poetry 1.0. So the question I asked myself is, what is Poetry 3.0? And one idea I had was that you might somehow use a game engine to display the poetry, but the problem there was that the game engine is simply capable of doing far too many things. And without any kind of constraints, it's very difficult to decide what to do. And then I came up with this. This is an early prototype. It's an early prototype of what I call Poetry Slice. And what the idea of Poetry Slice was basically to cut the poem into pieces and to let the user experiment with putting it back together. So here we've got these two pieces. The one card has four left halves and the other card has four right halves. And this is just the simplest possible demonstration, but you can see it's already moderately interesting. Do not love the lion I was. I need you to realize it when you omit the bits you feel. I melt as you care. Or do not love the way things are. I need you to know that. You omit the bits you would not die. I melt as you kill me a second time. Or, oops, I'm hitting the wrong one there. Let's do it like this. Let's do it like this. The snapping does still need some improvement. I'm aware of that. The tiger you are and the way things are, choosing to know that, judging the moment, I would not die. There is a burden to kill me the second time. So that was my very first, sorry, my very first example of this, and I was reasonably pleased with that. So I experimented some more. Now, in that one, I had only really thought of the possibility of joining them up exactly in register. With this one really needs you to join them up out of register because, if we put it like this, it just goes a sort of clock, a sort of clock, a sort of clock, a sort of clock, a ticking in the head, a ticking in the head. You can see it's got a certain power, but it's not interesting in any way. But if you offset things a bit, you can already get much more interesting readings, even with these, relatively noddy phrases. A sort of clock, a sort of clock, a ticking in the head. A ticking in the head, a sort of game, a sort of clock. A sort of game, the life you thought, a sort of clock, a ticking in the head, the life you thought. A ticking in the head, a sort of game. A song not sung, a sort of game, the life you thought, a song not sung, a cause not lost, the life you thought. A cause not lost, a thought. A song not sung, a thought, an edge. A song not sung, a cause not lost, a thought, an edge. A song not sung, a cause not lost, an edge. A cause not lost, a thought, an edge, an edge. And I messed that up. I read one line twice, but you get the idea. And it's kind of samey. It's what's in procedural content generation known as the oatmeal problem, in that you can arrange this in all sorts of different ways. You can get all sorts of different outputs, but they're all kind of samey somehow. But that's because, these are all identical. You can see how the idea has legs. So I took that idea a little bit further and I came up with this one. And in this one, the blocks are different sizes. So it's very much suggested that you have to think about where you want to put the left and where you want to put the right. And you can get, again, quite different experiences. If I do it like this, you get think not, know not about last night taking a corner. Feel nothing. Where are you going, fancy man? Dangerous speed. Know why, what you deserve in life, all dressed up. Who you becoming in life, all things a subtle echo. Unsubtle in the telling of it, a message from posterity. But, if you put them in different places, and I won't read it again, but you can get moderately different poems, different enough to be interesting, I think. And then finally, the other idea that I'll just show very briefly is, of course, you are not restricted to words on these cards. You can put pictures or lines on them as well. So you can get this. Sorry, let me put it like that. There we go. And if you put it like this, you get 4 concentric circles. So that's effectively 4 infinite poems. Not the most interesting way to arrange it. But if you did this, I won't read these out. Partly because it's impossible to read this section. I got the colour too faint, but you know, that's trivial to fix. Now you get poems that spiral in like this. And of course, if I were to do it the other way, then I would get poems that spiraled out. So that's the basic idea, and there's a great deal more that you can do with it. In particular, you can do things like you could have half a rather ambiguous picture on one card, and then you have some other cards with what may be other halves of the same picture, and you line the pictures up, you line some words up, and then you get to see something that we intended. But the idea was not to make this a puzzle. The idea is not to say, you know, here are some poems cut up, find the right arrangement. The idea is to say, here is a poetry space with all sorts of fragments in it, put them together yourself, see what you find. And we could anchor all sorts of extra things like that. Like, for example, we could record us reading the poems and have that play back when people assemble stuff. I don't know whether that would totally work, because you heard I was changing the way I read it depending on how it was arranged, and we wouldn't be able to code that. But what we could do is, if someone found an arrangement that we had also found, and one that we particularly liked, then we could pop something up and maybe link them to a recording of us reading it. And I say us because I don't want to write all these poems myself. I want to get together with a small number of other poets and attempt to generate the fragments that will go into this. So that's the idea, and if you're interested in the idea, drop me a message.